One For All and Deku in general have recently progressed exponentially. We've now reached a point where Deku isn't arguably the strongest in Class 1A, he is the strongest by a long shot. In fact, he's already at top 5 hero level strength, and that's me being generous, it's more like top 3. But I know we love Mirako and she's proven herself to be crazy strong, so I won't disrespect her. We'll leave her in the conversation. The point is, our main character now is pretty damn strong, and while on this channel we expect a temporary regression or setback of some sort following this war, something far scarier than the current Deku is coming later. The predecessors of One For All will use Deku's body to fight in the future. Before we get into it, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to Plot Armor to never miss an upload. Your support is greatly appreciated. With that said, I hope you enjoyed the video. Let's get into it. From the beginning of the series, Deku has had a relationship with the spirits of his predecessors. So far, it's been a pretty one-sided relationship. They've stepped in when they had help to offer, and he's simply been the receiver of this help. Whether it was during the sports festival, where they prevented Deku from falling to the shocking power of Shinso, or even recently, where they helped him not lose One For All to Shigaraki and All For One. These predecessors have been useful, very useful, and as time goes on, they've been able to do more for Deku, and are now starting to grow a relationship with him. Like all things in the story, I imagine this will progress. Deku is very studious, and he's done great with learning the basics of the quirks he's gained access to. However, the time he has to put into mastering these quirks won't compare to the time and understanding that the original quirk user has. A tad bit different due to time with the quirk, but it's like Monoma with a quirk versus the original user. Deku is very strong, hardworking, and very talented, don't get me wrong, but in a way, he's a copy, not the original. The quirks he has have increased in their overall strength due to time baking in One For All, but output and usage are very different, and usage is something the original users would have him beat in. We've seen Deku do great things with Black Whip. He's used it to deal damage in the fight against Shigaraki, and to do things like hold cars up in the fight against Ending. And we've also seen him use Float when it was appropriate, but mastering just one quirk is a high task for heroes in this society. It's unrealistic to expect Deku to master all of his quirks. He needs to be able to utilize them, but mastering them is something he simply does not have the time for. We've recently seen All For One take control of Shigaraki's body, rescuing him from defeat after a real beating at the hands of Deku and the other heroes. One For All and All For One are very similar quirks, and with the will of All For One confirmed to be inside his quirk, it's reasonable to assume that the One For All predecessors will at some point be able to take control of Deku. Whether this will be something willingly passed or something taken remains to be seen, of course, but if it were to be triggered in a moment of overwhelming emotions, then forcefully taken seemed most likely. All For One has literally killed all the predecessors except All Might. I'm sure they'd all be thrilled to have the chance to directly lay hands on him with improved versions of their quirks through Deku. Or I guess technically lay hands on his successor, Shigaraki. Not sure a thorough beatdown is enough revenge to make up for being given an early death, but hey, I'm sure they'll take whatever revenge they can get. A lot of you have probably already made the connection, but this would be similar to the Avatar state in the Avatar series. I imagine Deku will, through his predecessors, gain access to all their knowledge and techniques, allowing him to use their quirks at levels he would otherwise be unable to. Now, whether Deku would work in union with them, or they would as a collective move his body, of course remains to be seen. However, with All For One controlling Shigaraki, I believe that direction is highly plausible. Whether this will be saved for the final fight of the series or something Deku gains access to earlier also remains to be seen, though I imagine after the current war, he will not only be consulting with All Might, but his previous successors more often. During the fight with Shigaraki, when referring to the interconnected world between One For All and All For One, Shimura Nana says that Deku can't move in this world yet. We know he'll eventually be able to roam in this world. The world has not only shown itself to be the home of the predecessors, but also their memories, the memories of the quirk One For All. Meaning, roaming in this world might be the key to gaining full help from the predecessors. So far, he's only been able to access this world through sleep and when he's been overwhelmed. I like to think it'll stay this way for a while before he eventually becomes able to enter it by his own will. All For One, the big bad guy, not the quirk, is of course not the original user of the quirks he possesses. However, he's been alive for a very long time, and so he now has quite the experience with a lot of these quirks he possesses. and this experience has shown itself on multiple occasions. First being the quirk combinations he put together in his fight against All Might, and more recently in the manga when controlling Shigaraki after taking a beating. All for One activated the quirk Rivet Stab from Shigaraki's spinal cord to reduce the burden on his mind and body. Something that just looked hilarious but was very clever. Something that Shigaraki most likely wouldn't consider doing himself, and is just proof that time with a quirk is essential. If things do really work out this way, what we'll have in the end is essentially a battle between One for All and All for One, rather than a battle between Deku and Shigaraki or Deku and All for One. And while I love all these characters, I think a more general battle between the quirks will serve as a true ending to the battle that's been lasting over generations. The only thing off about this concept is that All Might won't really be involved. However, I suppose we've seen him fight All for One already in the series, so maybe that can serve as compensation. And to be fair, he's beaten All for One twice now in a fight. One fight which we saw and the other we're just told about. And when you consider how strong All for One is, it's pretty crazy that All Might has beaten him twice now, especially when you consider the fact that he did this with just the strength of One for All. He did not have access to things like Black Whip or Float. And I can't help but wonder about the details of how this would be executed in the series. Would we see a different voice from Deku? Would all the predecessors be talking at the same time? And you have to wonder if Deku would even want to do something like this. He was trusted by All Might to become the successor of the quirk, and he was trusted to be the one to tell the world, I am here. So using a power like this would kind of be passing on the responsibility back to the previous predecessors. There's a lot we don't know about One for All. In fact, there's more unknown than known at this point. We are familiar with the first user, we're familiar with All Might, Shimura Nana, and the user of Black Whip. However, there are users we still don't know, and whether the personality of all these predecessors will conflict also remains to be seen, because it's possible they don't all want the same thing. A final cool aspect of all this that comes to mind for me is we'll continue to see the predecessors fleshed out as characters. It's not exactly the same, but they'll essentially have a relationship with Deku, similar to the one Naruto and the other Jinchuriki had with their tail beasts. With that said, that is the theory. Deku will be able to access the knowledge and techniques of his predecessors in the future. We'll have to wait and see whether he's in the driver's seat during this, or whether the collective personalities of his predecessors is in control. Either way, it'll be very cool, and I'm hoping we get to see something like this at some point in the series. Through seeing All for One control Shigaraki, I believe this is almost guaranteed to happen. What do you think? In the comments, share your thoughts on whether this is likely and whether or not you'd want it to happen. If you haven't already, be sure to drop a like to let us know you enjoyed the video, and subscribe to Plot Armor to never miss an upload. And if you're feeling extra generous, check out our Patreon link in the description, where you'll be able to further support what we do over here. Until next time, I'm KJ, have a great day, goodbye.